Good morning mga katribu and welcome to another episode of your weekly business sense. And joining me are of course the very handsome editors of the Daily Tribune.
I'm Teddy Montelibano.
And I'm Chito, Lozada.
And we are live in Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube. Now for today's episode, we are joined by the Managing Director and CEO of Cirtek Electronics, Mr. Brian Liu. So Mr. Brian Liu, welcome to the show.
Hi everybody, it's great
Hi,
to be here.
Brian.
Yes. Well, we invited Mr. Liu, because Mr. Liu is on top of of a major semiconductor company in the Philippines, Cirtek Electronics, which has been there since the mid 1980s,
That's right.
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. We invited, purposely we invited Mr. Liu to Daily Tribune to enlighten our people, our audience, what's happening to the semiconductor industry in the Philippines. Okay, not a lot of people are familiar with the semiconductor industry. Could you enlighten us?
Yeah, well, the semiconductor industry is a very crucial part in everybody's lives. And the way I see it is, semiconductors comprise the very impetus of technology itself. So any gadget, any device, or any equipment would not be able to function without the aid of semiconductors. And because of the continuous evolution of technology and new innovations being created, this catalyzes new semiconductor device families to be continuously created. And that's why I do believe that semiconductors play a crucial role as the building block of technology itself.
Okay, you mentioned that the semiconductor is the building block of technology, and we agree with you completely. In fact, there was a time that the semiconductor industry was the biggest export of the Philippines. So, and you said that, and you also mentioned that semiconductors continue to evolve, producing other technologies. So, like that does include microchips,
Microchips.
processors, computer processors, and if so, what are the kind of semiconductor components that we produce here in the Philippines?
Well, there are a lot of different companies present here in the Philippines. Like you mentioned, Intel. Unfortunately, they have exited the market a long time ago, but they were once the biggest volume runner in the country. And you look at other companies like Amcor, Toshiba, Nidec. These are all technology companies present here in the country as well. But the key difference with them is they're actually owned by a foreign parent.
Okay.
So everything they build here in the country goes back to the parent company for their own use.
Okay.
Yeah, but for us, Cirtek, what we do is we build parts independently. So we're not owned by a foreign parent whatsoever. We are an independent Filipino semiconductor company located at the heart of Laguna Technopark. So basically, we maintain a very highly diversified portfolio. So we do semiconductors for RF and communications, industrials, aerospace, consumer, system and packages, and automotive as well. So that's how we keep things diversified, because certain times in the economy, some segments perform better than others.
Right.
And if you have a 100% focus on just one segment, and it just so happened that that segment took a nosedive, then that would be catastrophic. So we try to keep it as diversified as possible.
When did you put up when did your family put up the company?
So my father is actually from Taiwan,
Okay.
who migrated to the Philippines back in the 80s. So, no, trace back, he migrated here back in the 70s.
70s.
But he started Cirtek back in the 80s. So what brought him here was he used to be employed by a semiconductor company in Taiwan, which sent him here to the Philippines in joint collaboration between the Taiwanese government and the Philippine government to establish the semiconductor industry in the country.
Yes.
So he was one of the key engineers that played a role in establishing the industry here, and later on saw the potential of this industry to become a critical player in world technology. So that's how he decided to set up Cirtek in the
I see,
Philippines.
okay. When you started it in, I believe, in 1984, right?
Yes.
Is it 1984?
84.
When you started, when your father started it, what were the products that you came up with?
That's
The
a
regional
really
products.
That's very interesting because originally semiconductors were only used for the defense sector.
Yeah.
Yes.
So all the chips that Cirtek used to produce and produced manually were all going into the aerospace segment,
Abroad, overseas, or here?
all for export to the U.S.
To the US.
Yeah.
So,
So your main market was the U.S.
Yes.
from the start.
From the start. Yes, that's right.
so you're also producing semiconductors or microchips for aerospace, but I understand that the Philippine aerospace sector is already improving. In fact, we've already produced or manufactured a plane in Batangas. Do you also supply them with microchips?
Well, not directly, but I would assume indirectly, because the subcomponents that actually comprise this aircraft are derived from many different companies. So you're talking about different controllers, different box build assemblies from defense contractors like Honeywell, Aeroflex, perhaps Texas Instruments as well. So those names are some of our key clients, and we do produce some parts for those guys. So I would assume maybe some of those parts have made its way back to that aircraft.
So you do produce components for missile technologies.
I would say they would be guidance
Yeah.
systems. So positioning devices, guidance, positioning, and mission critical devices. That's what we call them. Yeah.
So Brian, what was your best year then? Mid 80s?
Well, we only started really growing back probably 7 years ago.
7
But
years.
before that, the goal was never really to grow Cirtek. And back in 2019, we reached an all-time high prior to the pandemic.
2019.
Yeah.
It's
2019.
just recent.
Yeah, but because of the effects of the pandemic, world economies closed down.
Supply chain problem.
Supply chain problems occurred. So we took a bit of a slowdown during that time frame. 2020 to 2021 was a bit of a slowdown for us, but for our full year 2022, we have breached our all-time high of 2019's performance.
So you're still peaking.
Yeah, we do believe that the semiconductor industry is in a renaissance of a period right now, where a lot of the supply pool is shifting away from Greater Asia, making its way to Southeast Asia. So this should serve as a good tailwind for the semiconductor industry.
And the excitement for AI have anything to do with it? The renaissance, I mean.
Basically, AI is a new segment in the semiconductor industry. It's similar to how 5G was 6 or 7
5G,
years
yeah.
ago.
Oh, yeah.
So 6 or 7 years ago, 5G was the new segment, and as it made its way into the mainstream, comprising more of a part of our lives now, that has matured. And now we're seeing a new need for a new subsegment, such as artificial intelligence, to power new automation and new devices through this automated way of machines actually learning and doing things on their own. So this has created new device families as well, especially in the processing space
Yeah.
and the hybrid system and packages. So we're talking about multi-function chipsets being consolidated into one system, hence a new product family being derived.
Wow.
So which of your portfolios are um, doing good numbers, and which market are also have the highest demand or higher demand?
So basically, it's a mix. So we keep our portfolio as diversified as possible. But back in the height of the pandemic, RF and communication chipsets actually comprised a large volume of our production. Basically, because of the demand from work from home, hybrid workspaces, this prompted a lot of demand for higher bandwidth and connectivity. So some of these chipsets go to the laptops that we work on. So as you know, demand for laptops also surge during work from home setups. And right now we're seeing an industrial revolution where a lot of traditionally mechanical devices are being electrified. So we're seeing good demand on our industrial side. These are BMS systems, battery management systems, power management devices. Power management devices are responsible for handling the power circulation within subsystems, and that's also an attractive space to be in. So system and packages are also what we call the tailored chipsets. So that's also providing some good demand for our industry.
So these industries are, of course, the electric cars, electric vehicles, and then
Electric vehicles.
yeah, and then industries that are shifting to automated operations.
Automated.
Yes, that's right. So we're seeing more things get connected to
Yeah.
each other, and they all somewhat complement each other. One, a new product family cannot exist without the maturity of a previous one. So right now, you're able to have artificial intelligence because we have faster data transmission now. Larger packets of data can be transmitted much quicker. And to actually power this artificial intelligence, that's exactly what you need. Quick data transmission. So it couldn't have existed without a previous one coming into maturity.
So you mentioned artificial intelligence and connectivity, and these are all interconnected.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as all the technologies, Internet of Things, gadgets, our homes, our vehicles, our cars, everything that we do that has technology in it can now be connected using the internet. And then there's of course the artificial intelligence component. And then you provide, and as you mentioned, this technology, this evolution in technology, AI, gadgets, Internet of Things, and the connectivity factor. If we integrate all of these things, it will require a new set of family product, right? That are capable of providing or powering all these interconnected technologies and gadgets. So, do you what's your new product for that?
More powerful chips.
Or the chips that you're producing to power all those things.
Yeah, it's a combination of different families, but to put it in a nutshell, basically I would describe these as the tailored chipsets, bespoke
Tailored,
products.
yeah.
So we call them ASICs,
Oh,
application
yeah.
specific ICs. So ASICs. So they're application specific, specifically because they are application specific. So you can't just purchase these chipsets from anybody. You can't like order them off the rack because they are customized and protected by the intellectual property protectionism. So that's what makes this segment very special, because you they're not what you call the jelly bean devices that have been commoditized. So at the peak of globalization, we saw a lot of the supply pool of semiconductors shift to Greater Asia, and that caused a lot of disruption in the semiconductor market, mainly because it commoditized these chipsets. And it is these very commoditized chipsets that are now starting to be phased out with the influx of new device families that are being designed in. So companies are very careful now in choosing which technology partner to work with to house these technological devices. And I think that part of this move will serve as a good tailwind for the Philippines, especially on the semiconductor industry. So that's something that we believe long term will continue and will serve as a great catalyst.
So how will that benefit the Philippines?
Well, believe it or not, the semiconductor industry in the country has been around for a long time.
How long is that?
Back
2
in the
decades? 3 decades?
almost 3
Back in
decades.
the 80s.
Yeah,
They started in the 80s.
yeah. Back in the 70s, actually.
Oh, in the 70s.
Yeah,
Even before the boom in Taiwan.
definitely.
Taiwanese boom.
So
Yeah.
we were ahead of Taiwan.
We're ahead of
I
Taiwan.
believe so. Yes.
Yes, we were. We
Yeah,
were.
I believe so.
But these were propelled by foreign companies.
Well-
They chose to invest here.
Not
Or
exactly.
Filipino.
These are local companies.
Local companies,
You're
yeah.
talking about companies like Stanford Electronics,
Stanford Electronics.
Dionetics. So these were Philippine companies, Philippine tech companies. But you won't see them around anymore these
Yeah,
days.
so what
right?
happened along the way
I believe, lack of support from
from government?
eventually a lot of world crises happened between now and
Motorola
that
used to be
time.
here as well, right?
Yeah.
That's an
Motorola.
American company.
Motorola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, going back to my question. So, the boom in semiconductor, how will that benefit the Philippines?
Well,
As you mentioned.
for one, semiconductors is one of our biggest exports, so it will create a lot of
Steel.
jobs and
Steel.
still. So that's going to create a lot of jobs, which will translate to higher
Labor-intensive.
GDP. We need a good GDP if we want to make sure that our currency stays healthy and our inflation stays tamed. So we have to start building things again in the country, right? So by having a propagated semiconductor industry, that's going to complement the country's GDP. And not to mention, export is a foreign currency oriented business. So the more dollars we bring in here,
Correct.
I think that would help our reserves as
Yeah.
well.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So also our overseas Filipino workers would also be happier with a better currency exchange where they can have exchange more dollars for more pesos.
Yeah. You,
Is it a labor-intensive industry?
Half.
yeah.
It's highly automated,
Highly automated, right?
but we still need a lot of people. You can't get rid of people.
You've mentioned a lot of tailwinds,
Correct.
but there are also headwinds, especially from the U.S. Only recently, President Biden of the U.S. announced that the U.S. government will finance $50 billion so that chip manufacturing or semiconductor manufacturing will go back to the U.S. So how will that affect the Philippine semiconductor business? But before you answer that question, we will pause for a short break.
This break is brought to you by Angkas, Beat the Traffic, Bayad Center, hashtag Bigger Better Younger Bayad, and you can buy it all. Conti's Bake Shop and Restaurant, delightfully yours. Globe, atin ang mundo. Meralco, ang liwanag ng bukas. SM, we've got it all for you. Smart, live more today. Union Bank, it starts with you. And Tata Consultancy Services. Straight Talk dives deep into pressing issues of leadership, geopolitics, business, and more. Engage in insightful conversations with industry shakers, government leaders, and trailblazers every Wednesday at 10 a.m. only here on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube. A wellness show dedicated to empowering viewers with the knowledge and inspiration needed to lead a healthy lifestyle. Be Well Now, hosted by Miss Cory Crino, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. only here at Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube. Parayan at talakayang showbiz, times 2, doble-doble! Kasama ang dalawa sa walang kupas na talakayan ng showbiz, Alwin Ignacio at Alex Brosas. DTT Show, tuwing Sabado at Linggo, alas 4 ng hapon. Dito lang.
Still watching the Weekly Business Sense. And still with us is, of course, Mr. Brian Lu, the CEO and President of Cirtek Technologies. Electronics, sorry. So before we took a break, we left a question about the announcement of the U.S. President, Joe Biden, that the U.S. government will provide at least $50 billion to fund semiconductor business in the U.S. so that they want to bring back the semiconductor operations of American companies in the U.S. I think to protect their semiconductor supply needs, and of course to bring back more jobs to the U.S. And how, with that decision, how will that affect or impact the domestic semiconductor business or industry in the Philippines?
You know, that's a very interesting question, and that's a nice view to tackle, because this plays a very macro catalyst for the industry, as you know. And if you've seen in the news recently, they've already started this initiative with announcements from TSMC to establish facilities in the US, Intel to expand into other states in the United States. So it's all taking the initiative to bring back manufacturing into the US. And I think once this has fully unraveled, I believe that a lot of the manufacturing jobs will be moved back to the United States. But it's a huge pie.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, the size of the pie has remained the same. It's just the pieces have been moved around and rearranged.
Distributed.
They redistributed it. So if you ask, where did the other pieces come from? So what happened was a big chunk of those pieces came from Greater Asia, and they want to move it back to the United States. But there will be a spillover to the Philippines as well, because we are considered a IP-friendly country. We're not viewed as a threat, meaning intellectual property is protected here in the Philippines. Because what happened before was globalization peaked. A lot of these devices got spread out, and the reason why it got commoditized is because it got copied. So when you flood the market with something, it cheapens it. So now that we're seeing this pool getting constrained, we're seeing a renaissance in the period of a renaissance of a period in the industry where market prices for semis are actually reaching more of a premiumized state. So part of that reason as well is the surge in commodity prices. Back in 2021, at the peak of the Russia-Ukraine war, we actually saw metal prices surge through the roof. Oil, gold, copper, aluminum, steel. Semiconductors make use of a lot of these metals.
So raw materials for your product.
No materials.
So that squeezed profit margins, but because of the tailwinds from geopolitics that shifted pieces of the pie to the West and to Southeast Asia, that allowed for higher prices for semis that mitigated these increase in commodity prices. So overall, I think it'll work out in a neutral way.
What about Cirtek specifically? What happens to you in the wake of the enactment of the CHIPS Act?
Well, we much of our client pool is actually comprised of U.S. technology companies. So we build parts for the likes of Honeywell, Analog Devices. Uh, we also do parts for Texas Instruments. And over in Europe, we partner up with Swiss companies like EM Micro, German companies like Infineon and Prema Semiconductor. So I do think that it will be overall a positive because much of our client base is US companies. So they have shifted a lot of their demand towards Southeast Asia. And part of the initiative that we're seeing is we're experiencing much more qualification builds for new device families. And these are new device families designed to phase out commodity products. So overall, I think it's positive.
You have an affiliate or a company in the U.S. Does it manufacture chips?
No, they're not in the semiconductor space.
Okay.
Basically, this affiliate is into telecommunication infrastructure equipments. So these are hardware equipments such as cellular access point antennas, backhaul radios. So they're more for infrastructure products.
That's what your father's ventured into, right?
Yes, that's a space that he ventured into. Yeah.
What would be the next big leap for semicon chips? There's talk about the biological chips that can be that grows or something like that.
Yeah.
Biological chips.
Yeah,
What are those?
those are live semiconductor chips.
Yeah.
What is-
Can you enlighten us
explain that?
about that?
Well, that's not a space we're in at the moment.
Yeah,
But
that's too far up.
I believe that dabbles on the medical space.
The medical space.
Yeah. So the BOM or the bill of materials that comprise these types of chips are comprised of biological raw materials. So you're
materials.
talking about animal parts or plant-based parts that have capability to propagate inside a human being. So they're used for multiple applications, treatment of diabetes, analysis of blood.
Good news for me.
Good news.
Yeah, so it's
Cancer
practically
even.
for that.
Maybe
Cancer.
even.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we're still alive and that is perfected.
When this being for consumption,
Yeah.
human
Yeah, for human, not trial, but human consumption.
for human consumption and for retail something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's
For-
a wonderful initiative.
It's wonderful.
For humanoids like robots, would that work?
Well, that's a very interesting space. I mean, if you imagine like humanity making its way into outer space and setting
Yeah.
up civilizations there, I wouldn't be surprised if we'd see humanoids in the future. You know?
Using the biological chipsets.
How
Oh,
about
yeah.
the progress or the development in the semiconductor in this sector? Are we near there? That scenario where we can create humanoids or a
Robots.
thinking
you mean?
robot
Robotics.
or robots that actually is self-aware and it can actually
looks
has
and
their own
acts.
opinion.
Well,
Humans.
actually, what maybe the related question would be, can robots replace labor? The factory workers?
So they're already doing that.
They're
Uh,
already doing it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we have automation
Yeah.
on some spaces,
Automation.
but you still need the human touch on these custom devices because some custom devices do not follow the specific thresholds that you have on the tolerances and specification books. So you still need to. Sometimes you gotta color outside the lines.
Yeah, that's
And-
exactly what Stephanie C. You're familiar with Stephanie C.
Uh-huh.
Thinking machines. Yeah,
Thinking machines.
Yeah, she was thinking, you can have all of this AI do all sorts of stuff and everything, but there's got to be a human. But
Yeah,
there's
Yeah.
got to be a human in the room.
definitely.
And Brian, why is there more females as workers in semicon
Are there,
production.
Are there more females?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Engineers or,
No,
And
labor,
the
labor,
laborers.
manual laborers.
manual labor?
Yeah.
Oh, is there a
factory
reason for
labor.
that?
It definitely is actually.
yeah?
So most of the technicians
Oh,
are male by gender demography, but for the operators, we usually tend to prefer female operators because of
Yes.
more delicate hands. So
Yeah, small.
yeah, so delicacy is of utmost concern in the industry. You're talking about wiring devices wherein these gold wires are even thinner than a strand of our hair. So it's that precise to the point that you need highly trained and skilled individuals to man these machines. So that's
women-
why we prefer
Yeah, women
women.
are more trainable than men.
More delicate touch.
Yeah, delicate
The
touch.
delicate touch
female
that
workers, are they trained abroad? Are they trained abroad or here?
They're all trained here, actually.
trained here.
We have a in-house human resource management where we do all the training in-house.
How big is your factory in Laguna? It would be interesting to check it
Yeah.
out. Have you been there?
No, never been. But
Can
if,
you give us a tour
if you
one
invite
time?
us,
Oh yeah,
It'd be
definitely.
interesting.
We'd
I've
be
never
happy to
been
have you.
inside a semiconductor manufacturing
Yeah.
plant.
We'd be honored to have you there, Teddy. And,
great.
you guys.
yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that near Canlubang? Or is it inside Canlubang?
No, it's very near New Valley.
New Valley.
Yeah, it's very near New Valley. Yeah.
Sa
Place
may-
of our
Toyota.
sports
Yung
editor.
Toyota, yung
Is it owned by the government? Laguna
No
Techno-
Valley.
Laguna
It's-
Technopark is government?
I think it's Ayala Development. I think.
okay.
Yeah.
Santa Rosa, is it?
Santa Rosa.
Rosa.
Santa
Yeah.
Rosa.
Correct.
Yeah.
Malapit sa may Ayala.
Ayala.
Sa may, tsaka sa ano, sa Toyota doon.
Yung
Beautiful
plant,
place.
Yeah.
It's a lovely place.
Toyota
actually.
plant.
Well laid out, huh? Well laid out.
Yeah, we'd love to have you there.
We should have a
Just send us an invite and we'll be there.
Definitely. All right.
Out there one time.
So I guess we
And how
have to
old is the
wrap up now.
company? Since how old is your installation there, your facility?
Oh.
Since the 1980s, no?
Oh no! Back in the '80s, Cirtek originated in the heart of Manila, Ermita. So we were located at Ermita. Yeah.
Wow.
But eventually, in the early 2000s, there was a mandate for all manufacturing facilities to move
Transfer.
to the Technopark. So
Out.
yeah, that's how we ended up in Laguna
In Laguna.
Technopark.
And it's better.
Definitely, yeah.
And
Electricity is better.
your labor is from those parts, or are they, are they all over
Mostly from the south.
from Laguna?
Yeah.
Okay.
On that note, I guess we have to wrap up.
Wrap up na. Yeah, bear the Scots
Yeah,
surface.
maybe we can invite Brian again.
Yeah, we can invite Brian again.
Yeah,
it'd
maybe
be
we
great
can
to be
interview
here,
him in the factory.
Yeah,
we'll
that
do a
would be
factory
better.
tour. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Love
do a
to have you
factory
guys
On-
there.
taping.
Ano, no?
Yeah,
You will
yeah, we can
On
do a
site.
factory taping
That'd be
there.
great. Yeah.
Well, let's plan
Sounds
for
fun.
that.
So, Brian, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you
guys.
very much.
Thank you.
Very interesting conversation.
Yeah, we've learned a lot today.
Yes, we learned a lot, especially.
Yeah, we are
I
capable
took a
of
crash course in
producing.
semiconductors last time. To be honest with you.
We are capable of producing microchips for missile defense or missile technology. That's the first time I learned about that from
So many
Brian.
things, so many things that we've learned out. So thank you very much for enlightening us and the public.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank
It's
you
an
It's
honor
an
to be here.
honor.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
And once again, this has been
Wala.
the weekly.